So there's a very common experience that fearful avoidants have in that early stage of relationships when they're just dating somebody or getting to know somebody and haven't fully opened up and become more vulnerable yet and really built that deep attachment bond. And it's that they may leave relationships prematurely. And what I mean is like out of the blue, all of a sudden. So in this video, I wanted to cover 5 key reasons, plus like kind of a bonus one at the end, but 5 key reasons that fearful avoidants may suddenly leave relationships or suddenly pull away really dramatically, and really unpack what this is and why this happens so that you can understand it if you are FA and it's happening to you at a subconscious level and you're like, oh, I didn't realize this is what was going on inside of me. And then also if you're on the receiving end of this from a loved one in a relationship of some form. So the first one is that fearful avoidants will not communicate their needs very much. They may communicate small needs or communicate their needs from a place of frustration or criticism, but usually criticism just lands as just that. It lands as criticism rather than somebody actually hearing the need. So if you say to somebody, you never make an effort or you never, take a turn doing the chores or whatever it might be, usually the person like just hears, oh, you're criticizing me, and that's sort of what lands rather than hearing, oh, you need support, why didn't you tell me, right? So we tend to not unpack criticism that well in terms of translating it to needs. And what we'll often see is that this leaves a fearful avoidant feeling like there's an imbalance in relationships. And eventually, fearful avoidants will tend to just pull away altogether because they can't stand how imbalanced the relationship is, rather than working on communicating more and going towards that person to solve for that. And again, a big part of the reason for this is that subconsciously, fearful avoidants grew up often thinking that they couldn't communicate their needs because when they did, there was some kind of negative outcome, like they got dismissed, or there was too much chaos around for their needs to be made a priority, or they weren't understood. And so the fearful avoidant assumes rejection on some level around their needs the vast majority of the time, thus doesn't think that they can communicate constructively. Number two, if there is a lack of transparency or some kind of like incongruency that's taking place where like you say one thing and do another, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen fearful avoidants who've been like really invested in a relationship, really interested in somebody, see an incongruency and jump right away into this idea that that person's going to betray them or has been betraying them, and then just cut off the relationship. And rather than trying to find out why or like what's going on, like maybe the person white lied because they were embarrassed about something. If they see any kind of incongruency, they'll often take it as like, oh my goodness, huge red flag. I have to hightail it out of here to protect myself. And again, like as a fearful avoidant becomes more secure, the best thing to do is to actually address these things and have conversations like, hey, I noticed you said this one thing and now this changed. What's going on? I need to understand. And so the vast majority of the time, you might see that there's actually like a really reasonable explanation, and communication breeds trust, breeds the ability to like work through those small things. But sometimes it trips that I will be betrayed core wound and fearful avoidance so strongly that they just go right into self-protection and push away quite quickly. And this brings me to number 3, which is really showing any signs of distrust. Like if you're caught lying, if you're caught changing a story around anything, if you are incongruent, if you are inconsistent, you're not showing up consistently, you're kind of all over the map a little bit, you're not reliable, all these different things that can really cause a fearful avoidant to pull away. And again, this is not me saying if you are a fearful avoidant and you see all these signs of distrust that you should stay. This is me saying you should have a conversation to understand and get clarity. And if you're not getting answers that seem reasonable to you, then it's a good time to be like, okay, I investigated, I communicated, and I'm still not seeing something that makes sense. And now I can understand that this may not be a good fit. But what I generally see is fearful avoidance just hightail it out before even having that type of communication or dialogue. Number 4 is feeling like there are too many expectations in a relationship. Fearful avoidants easily feel really triggered by being taken advantage of. And again, it's usually because they're kind of their shadow is like to take advantage of themselves to please others. And sometimes that kind of like, comes back around. And then they're like, why isn't somebody showing up back for me in this reciprocal way? And, it's so important that like communication of needs allows that to come into play here. But if there's like a lot of expectations, a lot of pressure, fearful avoidants often feel like taken advantage of, trapped, helpless, powerless. all of these different core wounds can come up and cause them to pull away again, like suddenly, like it can feel all of a sudden, because they're usually letting these things kind of build up so that they can get triggered enough to just kind of leave and exit and stay safe that way. So really important thing to keep in mind. And by the way, if you are a fearful avoidant and you're like, I want to work on some of these things, best thing ever for like working through these things so that you can then foster healthy communication is to identify your core wounds and reprogram them. It will create so much emotional freedom for you. And we have a course called the Emotional Mastery Course you can check out for free for 7 days using the link below that will help you unpack that information, plug in all these different tools for reprogramming so that you can get into a position where you're going, okay, I feel frustrated by something. I can approach it without feeling like I'm so triggered that I can't deal with it in a healthy way, or in an ideal way. So it's a really huge step for fearful avoidance towards becoming secure. And then number 5 is feeling unseen in relationships, feeling like somebody's not present, feeling like somebody doesn't see you or hear you or is kind of dismissing you. That can be something that really triggers fearful avoidance to pull away. I will say it's less sudden and abrupt. They may pull away more emotionally rather than just leave a relationship over that. But it can be something that, when added up for long periods of time, can then bring them into our last one, which is feeling like they are disrespected. And disrespect can be a strong enough trigger that causes them to kind of, again, like hightail out of there, especially before there's been this like deep attachment bond, because it tends to be a pretty big core wound for fearful avoidance as well. So hopefully this makes sense. And I will add in here too, like, feeling like there are too many expectations can also be like a boundary violation issue, which again will cause FAs to be like, I need to get out of here because it's something that they really don't feel so comfortable with. But check out that course if you want to work through some of these things. I'll put the link down below, and let me know any questions you have in the comments below about why FAs might leave relationships suddenly or pull away suddenly and what's really going on. And thank you so much for watching and for being here. And I will see you in future videos.